Hi, welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Lisa with Candles by Sincerely Ice Blue. On this channel, we talk about making candles, getting started selling candles, starting a small candle making business, and everything in between. Don't forget to click on that subscribe button, become part of the channel and the family. Would absolutely love to have you. And if you're like me, getting started in this industry has just been fun, but it's a whirlwind and it's a little intimidating. There is so much to learn. Just like any industry, whether you're a salesperson, a nurse, a doctor, a real estate agent, everything seems to have its own lingo and vocabulary, and candle making is absolutely no different. So whether you're getting started in your journey, whether you've been doing this for a little while, I think you'll like today's video and maybe learn something new. I don't know what got you into making candles, but for me, it's my love of candles. My daughter and I think I've said this in a couple of videos before, my daughter and I have this thing where when we go out to the store and we see candles, we literally have to smell every single one of them. And candles are really a part of our lives. Whether there's a storm that went through and you'd use candles to light your house because the power's gone out, maybe you're just trying to create a nice dinner ambiance or a relaxing bath. Maybe it's a birthday party or a funeral or a wedding. Candles are in a lot of our celebrations and events in our lives, and they come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. You can do pillars and birthday candles and votives and tea lights and tarts and melts and container candles and tapers and to get started making candles, you kind of have to understand, what is a candle? Candle is a light source with a wick embedded in a flammable solution. I have to apologize. The noise you hear in the background is the rain outside. It is pouring off of my roof like a bathtub is running. It is not a bathtub. That's actually rain that you're hearing in the background. Anyway, if we're going to talk about candles, we got to start with the basics. So like we said, a candle is made from a wick in wax. You have a couple different choices of wax. You can choose from paraffin, soy, beeswax, palm wax, coconut wax, apricot wax. You can make a combination, a mixture of your own wax, and there are pros and cons to everything. Paraffin and soy are the most common. Paraffin is a petroleum-based product. It has a higher melt point, and it does tend to hold additives better. Additives being your dyes, your fragrances, anything you're adding to the wax. Soy is a natural product. It tends to burn cleaner, but one of the cons to soy wax is it doesn't always give you the fragrance that you want from it. So it also doesn't contain pollutants. So for you, that means that you're not going to find any of that soot on the inside of your container or that black residue left behind on the inside of the candle container. So again, there are pros and cons to everything. If you're just getting started, you're more than likely going to start with a soy or a paraffin wax. Beeswax I haven't tried yet, but from my research, it's more of a rigid wax and tends to be something you see more with the pillars or the tapers or the votives. You also have to consider then the fragrances. Now you have some options with fragrance. You can go with fragrance oils, which you're going to see referred to as FO, or you can go with essential oils, EO. Fragrance oils are similar to paraffin. They're a manufactured product, whereas essential oils come from nature to make them. Pros and cons for both of those as well. Fragrance oils come in a wide variety of scents for you to choose from. Then you can combine them and make your own. Essential oils has more of a limited supply, and essential oils have a much higher price point. So to give you an idea on those price points, fragrance oils, I might be able to buy a 1 ounce container or 1 ounce jar, and it might cost me about $2.50 to $4. Just depends on the scent and where I'm buying that from. I can get a 16 ounce container for $18, and then the price goes up from there based on size. I bought a box of essential oil, and each jar was 0.33 ounces. That box of 6 cost $17. So that gives you an idea on the price. Combination of wax and your wicks and your fragrance oil and your containers. It's all going to work together as a complete system. So think of your candle as a system, not just as a candle, because I have to take all of these different things into consideration when I'm making them to get them to perform the way I want them to. So when we're still talking about fragrances, fragrances also have what we call notes. And those are the different levels of scents that you're going to smell when you open your container. So when I open my container and smell it, the first thing that I'm catching is what's called a top note. So they're going to take that candle, they're going to smell it, and decide if they like it or not, and if they want to burn that candle in their home. The top note is what is smelled first. It tends to be lighter, it dissipates more quickly, it evaporates off that candle faster, but it's what brings your customer to you. The next grouping of notes is called middle notes. Now, I heard somebody else describe it as the heart of the candle, and I really like that, so I've kind of adopted that as my own, but it is the heart of the candle. It's what you're going to smell anywhere from 15 minutes into that candle for the next 4 hours. And it's going to be that scent that catches your attention once the candle is lit. Now, the middle notes are going to blend into what we call the bottom notes or the base notes. And that's the scent that's going to linger later. So 4 hours goes by, and I don't know if you've ever noticed this. Your candle does tend to change scents. So it smells one way when you first light it, and then as it burns, it smells another way. And then after you blow it out, it may smell an entirely different way. Those are the bottom notes, and they tend to be heavier. And it's what you're going to smell last. So again, all these things come into play when you're choosing your fragrances. So when I'm online and I'm looking at a supplier and I'm picking and choosing my different fragrances, you'll see in the descriptions, they tell you what the top, middle, and bottom notes are. So as you progress in candle making and you start making your own fragrances, you're kind of going to look at those descriptions to know what goes with what. So for instance, I may look at something and see that it has a middle note of vanilla, and another fragrance that I like that I think might combine with it has a bottom note of vanilla. Well, I know the vanillas should play well together, so I might want to give that a try. Or I might take like a pumpkin and put it with something musky or spicy if I'm going for like an autumn scent. So you're going to learn to kind of read those notes, pick and choose your favorites, see how they hit you, and then build your candles on them. Now, one thing to keep in mind, and I have this in one of my videos where I'm talking about fragrance and scent, is that scent is unique to all of us. And my daughter and I have found this out when we smell candles and we go shopping, because she'll pick up one and love it and she'll hand it to me and I'll hate it. Or your friends might do that, or your customers might do that. So you might be set up at a show and somebody picks up your candle and they love it. Somebody else comes over and they do this, and they put it down and walk away. Don't be offended, because that's just not pleasing to them. It doesn't mean you made a bad candle. It doesn't mean the scent doesn't work and it's not a great candle. It's just their preference. So scent and smell and the way we perceive things is very unique to each individual person. So now I have my wax and I have my fragrance, but I need a way to deliver the fuel, the wax and the fragrance, to a flame. I need to be able to light that somehow. We do that with what's called a wick, which you probably are familiar with, because if you've ever had a birthday candle, the wick is what you light. There are so many wicks to choose from, and I'm here to tell you, wicking is hard. It is one of the hardest parts of making a candle. It's easy to pick your wax. It is so much fun to pick a fragrance. It is hard to pick a wick. And a disclaimer, I am not an expert on wicking, not by any means. I'm fairly new to this industry as well, and I'm going to refer you to all of the candle makers out there that have been doing this for years and have experience. There are many, 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 many videos about wicking and how to choose a wick. Another great resource for you is going to be your supplier. So wherever you're buying your wax and your fragrance oil, when you pick your wax, when you scroll down to the bottom, a lot of times they'll make a recommendation for you on what wicks you should begin with to try. Also, do not be too proud to pick up the phone or send an email to customer service. because they're going to be the ones with the knowledge that can help you so that you don't have to. Wow, did you hear that? That shook the whole house. They're going to be the ones that are going to work with you and give you some ideas and suggestions. Now, you have to keep in mind, this is a system, right? We said it's a candle system. So they may be able to say to you, start with this wick. Start out with a CD18 or whatever it is they're recommending, an eco wick, a premier wick. And again, wicks, wicks, wicks. When you're choosing your wicks, it comes down to a lot of different things. It's going to be the size of your candle jar. It's going to be the type of wax you're using. It may be the load of fragrance you're putting in there. Are you doing 10%, 15%, which we're going to talk about here shortly? It's going to be the diameter of your candle, which we're also going to get into. So there are a lot of different things that come into play. The standard wick seems to be about 6.5 inches by 2 millimeters, and that seems to be pretty standard. And this size wick will fit into most of the candle jars that you're going to work with. But if you go with tea lights, those may come with specific wicks. If you go with tins that are 1 or 2 ounces, that's a different size wick. And then obviously the taller, that's going to be a different size wick. You can also do a single wick, which is what you're seeing in most candles, is just one wick. You can do what's called a double wick, and that's 2 wicks or multiple wicks, which could be even more. If you've ever bought a large candle, sometimes they have 3 wicks in them. And that all has to do with how your candle's going to burn and creating the effects that you need out of that candle. That's also going to have to do with the type of wax you're using and then the diameter on your candle. Now, typically, if your candle's over 4 inches in diameter, you're going to use multiple wicks in there. But sometimes you may even double wick if it's 3 inches diameter or more. You're going to have to play with it. You're going to have to try it. And again, I'm not the expert on that. Watch those other videos. Hopefully someday I'll be able to put my own wick video together, but I'm not there yet. But that's okay. I'm going to get there. So when we're talking about wicks then, another thing is a wick tab. A wick tab is nothing more than this little silver piece that goes on the end of your wick. Now, you can buy the wicks pre-formed like this with the wick tab attached, more thunder. Or you can actually get to the point where you're making your own wicks, and they'll sell you the wick itself on a spool, and you cut it and you attach it to the wick tab. I don't know if I'm ever going to get to that because these are so easy to use. And to attach them in your candle, there's a bunch of different ways to do that. One way is with glue dots, and they're literally just little stickers that are, I'm going to take it and stick it to the bottom of my wick tab, and then I'm going to peel off the other side and I'm going to put that into the base of my candle. Now, forewarning, once you stick them, you usually can't get them off and move them. So you're going to have to practice centering it or putting the wicks where you want them. There's other ways to attach them as well that I have not tried, but I have seen recommendations for using high temperature hot glue. Somebody's actually recommended Scotch tape, which I don't necessarily know if I would try, but maybe using the dots or the glue dots or the circles or whatever you want to call them, because they're very easy. Now, I've gotten these on Etsy and they work really well, and they come in different sizes. You can also buy these little tabs directly from your candle suppliers as well. A lot of times you can get them in sheets or you can get them in rolls. Another thing when you're working with your wicks is how do you get them to stand up in your candle when you pour the wax? And we can do something like a Wick Bar. And these, you can use all kinds of different things. You do not have to buy one of these. I got one of these for my square jars, and I got them from a supplier on Etsy. But there's many other things you can use, and you can use things that you have at home. One is popsicle sticks. You can take them and drill a small hole in the center, and I'd simply place this over the wick, and it should hold it steady while I'm pouring my wax. Another thing you can do is clothespins, which we use when we do them. And the small hole right here is where we'll put the wick. And sometimes we'll actually even do that in combination with the popsicle stick. We'll bring the wick up through that, and then we'll clip this on top to heave it, hold it, to heave it. That little extra tightness to the wick. You don't want the wick to curve when it's in the wax, because then as it burns, your wax is going to burn unevenly because it's going to follow that curve. Another thing you can use that you might have at home is chopsticks or cotter pins. You can use anything that's going to keep that wick nice and tight in your candle when you're working with it. Another one that I have is these other little wick holders, and these are nice because I can set them and sometimes they fit around the diameter of my jar. I can see how that fits there. And then also it's got this little notch in it that allows me to pull it tight and pull my wick over into that. So again, you've got many different options when you're working with securing your wick in your vessel before you pour your wax. You want to clean your vessel, so you're going to want to take your jar. I recommend spraying it or wiping it down with rubbing alcohol. That seems to work really well. Let it dry, and then you're going to put that tab on your wick and then put that into your glass. You definitely need to press that down to make sure that it's nice and secure. Now, this is another thing that I saw somebody else use, and so I ordered some off of Etsy, but it's a small little tube basically designed to press on the wick. So I'll load my wick into here. When I'm getting ready to press it in, I'll put it in there. I'll put my little dot on the bottom, and then I'm just going to use this to press it down. Now, before I got these, the other thing my husband and I were using was a piece of PVC pipe. That worked just as well if you have something like that at home. The other thing I was doing was just taking a pen or a pencil that hasn't been sharpened yet and pushing it around the edges. All of those things work well, so use what you have, and then as you grow and expand, you can maybe buy some of these little gadgets and tools. Okay, so now we've got our wick and our wax and our fragrance. So one thing we really haven't talked about yet is the jars themselves. And that's because those, again, are going to be very personal. You're going to choose kind of what appeals to you and what you're going for in your line. If you're going for more fun candles, if you're going for specialty candles, if you're going for more exotic candles, and you'll see when you start shopping, or even if you've been doing this, every time I turn around, I find another vessel that, oh, I could use that. Oh, I might use that. And I have to rein myself back in because every time you change your vessel, you now have to retest everything. So vessel shopping is probably going to come at the beginning while you're choosing your waxes and your wicks and your fragrances, because in order to pick your wick, you need to have a vessel so that you have that diameter. So when it comes to containers, the sky's the limit. So let's talk about the wax now. Let's kind of backtrack a little bit. We talked about the different types of wax, but now I have to take my wax, which comes in either chunks. I can buy them in blocks that I have to chunk up. I can get them in pellets. I can get them in flakes. There's a lot of ways to buy wax, and it's going to depend on what you buy and the quantities you buy. The weird thing about making candles is I have to melt wax to make a candle so that people can melt the wax in my candle. Right? Yes. I have to melt it to be able to pour it. You're not getting wax in a liquid. You're getting it in a solid. You're adding your additives, your fragrance oils, your dyes. If you're putting any kind of pressed flowers or anything you're putting in your candle, it's an additive. And then I got to pour it. I have to make a candle. So couple things that matter when you're talking about wax. One is your melt point. The melt point is exactly what it sounds like. It's the temperature that that wax that you've chosen begins to melt. Then there's something called a mix temperature. The mix temperature is the temperature at which point you're going to put your additives in. So when you buy your wax, there's going to be a lot of information about it. And it's going to tell you something like, melt this wax and heat it to. So the melt point, let's say, is 120 degrees. But the manufacturer is going to tell you to heat it to 175 degrees. Then I want you to add your fragrance oil at 175 degrees. And then I'm going to have you stir it. And you're going to typically stir for 30 seconds to 2 minutes because I need that fragrance oil to bind with my wax. I need it to set up with my wax. Then I'm going to let it cool a little bit to what's called a pour temperature. And I'm going to pour the wax. So it's kind of hard to get your head around, right? If you're new to this, you're going to take that solid wax. I'm going to melt it. I'm going to heat it. I'm going to put my fragrance oil and dye in it. I'm going to cool it. I'm going to pour it. And then I'm going to let it cure. So now my wax is also going to tell me what my scent load should be, or what my scent load is capable of. What? Right. So I want you to think like a sponge. If you take a sponge that you're washing your dishes with, there is a point where your sponge becomes saturated and it can hold no more water in it. And what happens to it? So if I take that sponge full of water and I put it in the water and pull it out of the water, it does what? It just drips out, right? It cannot hold any more water. Think of that with your wax now. That's your scent load. So the supplier is going to tell you how much fragrance oil that wax can hold. And most of the time you're going to see it described as a percentage. So between 10% and I've seen it as high as 15%. So what that means is I can only take 10% or 15% or 12% max and add fragrance. I know. I don't like math either. But you have to do it or your candle won't burn properly. So now what does that mean? That means I have to calculate how much fragrance I can add to my wax at maximum. Ugh, right? I know. Now, I'm not the expert at this. There are many experienced candle makers out there that have some fantastic videos. But I'm going to give you a simple math today. And so, this candle is a 9-ounce straight candle. If I fill it to what's called the shoulder, so this little ledge right here, that's the shoulder. If I fill it to the shoulder, I can put 7 ounces in this candle. So that means inside I can put 7 ounces of a combination of wax, dye, and fragrance oil, my additives and my wax. Okay, so how do I do the math on that? I know there's 7 ounces that I can use inside. So we're going to keep this simple. We're going to say if we were doing this at a 10% fragrance load. So I would take 7 ounces of wax times 10%. That gives you 0.7. So now I'm going to take the 7 ounces of wax. I'm going to subtract 0.7 ounces of fragrance oil, which leaves me with 6.3 ounces. So that means if I combine 6.3 ounces with 0.7 ounces of fragrance oil, I will have a 10% fragrance load in my candle, and it will be a total of 7 ounces. That's the simple math for that. So again, like I said, I'm highly recommending you watch other videos because there are others out there and other ways to do it, but that's to get you started. Now, let's say I wanted to make 4 candles. I'm going to take 0.7, that was my fragrance, 0.7 times 4. I'm going to take 6.3 times 4, and that'll tell me how much wax I need for 4 candles and how much fragrance oil I need for 4 candles. Now, what that simple math does not do is doesn't take into account any waste or if you drip or if you spill. So again, this is just simple. It's going to get you started. If this is the first time that you're hearing this and you're just getting started with candles, this is going to give you that foundation to build. Now we've got it all ready. We know what to heat it to. We know what to pour at. We know when to add fragrance. We know how much fragrance to add. We've got our wax melted, and now we're going to pour it into our candles. When you do that, you're going to pour it nice and slow. You're going to try and pour as close to that wick as you can. And what you're going to hope for is what's called a single pour. A single pour is exactly what it sounds like. That means that after I do my candle, the top of it is beautiful. I don't have any imperfections in my candle. So the top of this candle would be like a single pour. I didn't have to pour it more than once. A sinkhole is nothing more than a depression on the top of your candle. It usually forms around the wick. A sinkhole may be a sign that it either cooled too quickly or there's an air pocket in that candle. That I'm going to do what's called either a repour or a top pour. So that's simply going to be melting a batch of my wax. And what I like to do is when I make a candle or a batch of candles, I like to keep some excess aside and I just put it in a small jar that I can reheat later in case I do have to do a repour for that batch. So I would melt this wax down. I'm going to put it in my pouring pitcher and I'm just lightly going to pour that on top, which will then fill in that divot or that hole and then also smooth out the top. That's called a repour. So what are some other problems you might see after that candle cures? Well, one of them is called frosting or blooms. And I don't really have an example of it to show you, but it's when the top of your candle gets what looks like snow or frosting. And a lot of times you'll see that in colors. Like, so if you do a red candle or a green candle, you might see a little bit of that. The frosting will not affect the use of your candle in any way, shape, or form. It is just something that we don't like as candle makers to see. Another problem might be something called wet spots, and that's literally nothing more than the glass adhesion. And what I mean by that is when your candle cools, you can spin this one around. This was a really bad one with glass adhesion. I don't know what went wrong on this one, but see what looks like big air pockets in there? That means that my wax is not adhering to the side of the jar. And it makes it look like what's called a wet spot. Wet spots should not affect the quality or the performance of your candle. And if you do notice a small one here and there, it's really nothing to be concerned about. You can still sell that candle. Sometimes the wet spots will appear over time or if you've shipped your candles. So if I'm here in Texas and it's 105 and my house is 76 and I take them from my house and I package them and I ship them off and now it's 110 or 130 in the truck that they're in. And let's say I ship them to Cleveland and now Cleveland is in the 60s. You can see how that went through all kinds of temperature changes. That could cause some of those wet spots when my customer opens their candle. They may notice that. If I have a dark container, I probably wouldn't even see them at all, but it is a little bit more noticeable on those clear containers. Another problem you might see is what's called sweating, and sweating is exactly what it sounds like. Your candle is sweating. And it could be because, again, I had it in the house and then I took it outside and I brought it back in and I had drastic temperature changes. So just like a person, my candle is sweating. But remember we were talking about the wax, and my wax could only hold 12 to 15%. What happens if I go more? Because as candle makers, I want more scent. So shouldn't I just add more fragrance? No, we're going to talk about that in a minute. But if I overdo it, so like that sponge, it's got to go somewhere. If I overdid it and I went with 16%, even though I could only do 12, it's got to go somewhere. And your candle could be sweating out that extra fragrance. Think of it like you're sweating out impurities, right? Your candle's trying to get rid of it because it's got nowhere to go. The wax can't handle it. And it could be a problem because have you ever gone to a restaurant and ordered, I don't remember what it's called, the dessert where they light it on fire, or one of the fancy drinks that they light on fire? The way they do that is they take 151 rum and put it on the top and they light it on fire. And it's a big burst of flame, and then it eventually burns itself out and you can drink your drink or eat your dessert without any problems. Well, that's the same thing that could happen with your candle, is that your customer goes to light it, and something we didn't talk about yet, but fragrance oils have a flash point. Now, a flash point is the point at which your fragrance could spark or catch fire if exposed to an open flame or a heat source. When you're buying your fragrances, you don't have to really concern yourself entirely with that flash point because you're not taking your oil and pouring it into flames. But where it does come into play is if my candle is sweating that out, because now my customer takes the lighter, they put it there, they're exposing that oil to a flame, And if the flash point is low enough and your candle's ignition source or the lighter is hot enough, you can see how that might cause a problem. And in regards to that flash point, you don't really have to worry that if I take that oil and I'm adding it to this wax that they told me to heat to 175, but my flash point is 140, is it going to catch fire? And I can tell you, when I first started making candles, I kind of freaked out about that a little bit because that's what went through my mind. But I did some research. I contacted the supplier and they assured me and explained to me what a flash point is, and that as long as I'm careful and I'm not dropping it into the flames on my stove, I should be fine. But obviously I should practice safety. So now we've got our wax and our fragrances and melted them, combined them and poured them. And it's a liquid in this jar. Now what? How do I even get to the point where I see these problems? Well, they have to cure. And curing is literally the process that your candle goes through, where it's taking everything you've mixed together and it's allowing it to bind together. So think of glue. Right? If you break something and you glue it back together, you can't just glue it and then pick it up and shake it around. The glue's got to dry. It's got to adhere. It has to bond the pieces that you've put back together. That's what you're doing with your candles. You're curing them. The cure time is going to differ based on the wax you use. And again, read the specifications on the type of wax you choose. A lot of times with paraffin, you're going to see that it has to set up for at least 2 days. And some of the manufacturers recommend a week to 2 weeks. Most soy products, you want to let them cure for 2 weeks. Beeswax, apricot wax, all of those different waxes are going to have different cure times. Best practice is to let your candles cure for 2 weeks. I know, you made this beautiful candle. I want to test it. I want to burn it. I want to sell it. I got to let it cure. Yes. Yes, if you want them to burn optimally. So much to think about, right? And we're only getting started. Anyway, when you're curing, there's a lot to think about there too. You don't want to store in an overly cool place. You don't want it to cool too fast because that affects the jar adhesion. You don't want to cure it in a place that's too hot because then it won't set up properly. So you want a nice controlled environment. And try and use the same place all the time at around the same temperature. So that way you've got that consistency with your candles when you're making them and also when you're testing them. And I just found out yesterday, actually, that a recommendation is that when you're curing your candles, after they set and I can take those wick holders off, that you should put your lid on them if there's a lid. So that was recommended to me yesterday by one of the suppliers, because I was talking about some problems with a fragrance throw, which we're going to get to. I know I keep telling you we're going to get to stuff, but we're getting there. We're working through it. Okay, now I can sell it? No, you cannot. You have to test them. Now burn your candle to evaluate the performance. Right. So I don't know if this has ever happened to you where you've bought a candle and you got it home and you were disappointed and had some issues. And not the issues we just talked about. I mean other issues. Let me tell you, don't shortcut it. Do not shortcut it, because the testing process is going to help you to create your line and incredible candle. First and foremost, safety. You have to test your candles for safety. Listen, we're candle makers. We're dealing with a flammable product, which means you could be held liable if something goes wrong. So if something happens to this candle that catches my customer's house on fire, they could come at you for that. Now, again, disclaimer, I am not the expert. I am not a legal expert. I am not an attorney. I cannot advise you on the types of insurance or things like that that you need. Again, I'm going to recommend you to watch videos and reach out to a business or a legal advisor for what you need in your state. But there are different things that we're governed by as a whole. And I'm going to drop that link in for you on where to look. There's a website that I found for the government, and I'm going to try and just put it on here so you can write it down. But I highly, highly, highly recommend that you read up and understand candle safety, because I could do a whole video on that, and I'm going to try and do one in the future, just not right now. And I want you to understand, as you can tell, I'm kind of just going off on this. Safety is important. It is important to you because you should never, ever, 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 ever sell a candle that you have not tested for safety. You sell, you're actually required by law to put a warning label on them. And you can get these little labels here. And I know you're not going to be able to read that, but if you pick up any candle you have in your house, it should have a warning or a safety label on it. And if it doesn't, shame on them, but don't be that person. Make sure you're doing that. Now, you can custom create your warning labels, but again, consult your legal attorney advisor on that. I don't know if you knew it or not until you started making candles, but there is actually specifications for candle care. And I know on the website that I'm putting together, I've actually listed some tips, but you're going to include them, or you should include them with your order, or at least be prepared to educate your customers. You want to make sure your customers know candle care. And that's just simple things. Always trim your wick. Never leave a candle unattended. Don't leave an open flame near children and animals. Things like that. And those, again, all fall under the restrictions and requirements of candle safety. You're also going to be noting some of that now while you're burning your candles. So you're going to do burn testing. And that, again, is burning your candle to test the safety and then also the candle itself. So remember how we talked about wicking and that choosing a wick is not easy? There's problems that come with a improperly wicked candle. First one is called tunneling. The candle is burning a tunnel down the center of it. So you can probably see that. Tunneling is just a ring of unmelted wax on the sides of your candle. And it's definitely not good. I have purchased candles that have ended up this way, and it always kind of leaves you feeling a little bummed out. Like you look at that and you think, I didn't get to burn my whole candle. That's kind of a waste. I don't want my customers thinking that. I want a nice candle. I want it to burn evenly. So you can see this candle's surface. This has been burned twice so far. But see, it's a nice even burn. There's no tunneling down the sides or anything like that. Wick is not the right size for this vessel diameter combined with my wax and everything in it. So it's not getting hot enough to burn it properly. It's burning down the center. It's tunneling. The ideal flame height when you're doing burn testing is between 1/2 inch and 2 inches. It's going to depend again on the size of your candle. If I'm dealing with a larger candle, maybe like a unity candle or a pillar, I might have that larger flame. But if I'm dealing with a tea light, I don't want a 2-inch flame. Whoa, that is burning way too hot. So what does it mean if it's burning too hot? Well, that means that it's going through the wax way too fast. And problems with that, meaning I could pick this up. Have you ever done this where you've touched a candle and it's too hot? And what happens when things are too hot? We drop them, right? I don't want my customer to pick up a candle that they drop it. Now the wax spills on them and burns them. It's not a good thing. So this all goes back to wicking. This is what we're testing for right now. Keep in mind, and I haven't mentioned this yet, but everything we've done up to this point, you are recording it. So that means when I made this candle, I have a sheet of paper that I use. Now, I've seen people also use note cards. Some people use like an Excel document, whatever's going to work for you. For me, it works to have a sheet of paper for each candle. And on that sheet of paper, I have written down everything we've done so far. So I've noted what vessel I'm using, which container I picked, what's my diameter. So the diameter we haven't really talked about yet, but it is the measurement of the inside of your candle. So the inside wall to inside wall at its widest point. That's the diameter of the candle. So back to that paper, I'm writing down everything I've done. What wax have I used? What temperature did I heat it to? What temperature did I add my fragrance? What temperature did I pour? What was the room like? Was it hot? Was it cold? What's my fragrance load? Did I use an 8%, 9%, 10%? Do your math on the paper. I highly recommend that because later you may come back and go, how did I even come up with that number? What did I do? How did I get there? So everything you've done, what fragrance did you use? Where did you get it from? What wick did you use? I know, it's a lot. It's a lot. But this is all going to matter in the end because I can't recreate it or I can't fix it if I don't know what I've done. And I can tell you that when I first started making candles, I thought I knew what I was doing. And I thought I would remember. And then I went back and looked at those candles later and said, I have no idea what I did with these. And I kind of just kept them for myself and did a new batch. Don't be that person. Don't be me. Looking for is flickering. So, you know how when you watch movies and stuff, it's always so pretty to see the candles flickering. And if you buy a flameless candle, they make them flicker. Believe it or not, flickering is not good. You do not want your candle to flicker. I want my candle to burn at a nice 1/2 inch to 2 inch size flame and burn nice and steady. Now, as that candle is burning, I want to watch for the melt pool. The melt pool is nothing more than the pool of wax that is melting as your candle burns. And ideally, I want it to reach all 4 walls because I do not want this tunneling that we saw earlier. I want it to be nice like this one so that this candle is burning nice and smooth and flat. Because I'm going to get better results and longer burn time, more hours of use out of this candle than I am out of this one that tunnels. A general testing rule when you're testing for your melt pool is that I want to have it reach a full melt pool for 1 hour for every inch of the diameter. So if this is a 3-inch diameter, I don't want it to reach a full melt pool before 3 hours. I want it to take its time and get there. Now, have you ever had that happen where you've lit a candle and poof, it's all liquid really fast? Well, that typically means that your candle is burning too hot. Could be the wrong wick size or could be too much fragrance oil. But again, that's unsafe. And I'm also not necessarily going to get great lifespan out of this candle. It's just going to burn away too fast. And then my customer could be left feeling like, wow, I paid X amount of money for that and I got to use it for this. I'm not happy. I'm not going back. Candles burn hotter as they get down in the jar. And you might have experienced this yourself. When you light a candle, it takes a while to get hot, but it seems like once that I get a wax pool and it's deep and it starts burning down, it burns away faster. Candles burn hotter as they get lower into the glow. If I had a little tunneling, not this huge tunnel, but maybe just a little bit, and I know this candle is going to burn hotter as it goes down, I don't have to worry that it didn't get to a full melt pool in 3 or 4 hours on my first, second, or third burn. Because as it comes down and it burns hotter, it should, or hopefully will, catch itself up, meaning it's going to burn that excess wax and then start burning flat. So don't get overly excited about it unless you see tunneling like this one. But it is something for you to pay attention to because I don't want it to burn too hot. If you notice that I do a burn test and I get this excessive tunneling, that's going to tell me that I probably have this candle wicked improperly and I'm going to want to make an adjustment. And I'm going to want to go through all this process back up to this point and burn test again. So another thing that you're going to be looking for is what's called mushrooming. It's exactly what it sounds like. And if you see the top of this candle, it's got like a little ball on it. Looks like a mushroom, right? So that's called mushrooming. And it's literally nothing more than carbon buildup on the tip of that wick. Now, sometimes you might want to be concerned with it. Sometimes you don't. So maybe my wax says it can hold 10%. That no more than, but I could do up to 10%. But remember, I said that adding fragrance oil does not always give it a better scent or make that scent have a better throw, which we're going to talk about. So maybe this container with that wick and that wax, I've got a huge mushroom top on here. I mean, it's 2 or 3 times this size. That might tell me that my fragrance load is too much. And maybe I can't even smell anything. So how did I put 10% oil in there and I can't smell anything and now it's got a big carbon ball? It's burning too much and it's burning it off. There's too much fragrance in there for you to get a smell. I know it sounds counterproductive, but that's how candles work. It's a candle system. Remember, everything's going to work together. So now we can talk about hot throw and cold throw. We finally got to it. So cold throw. Cold throw is this. Talked about that, right? That's what your customer is going to do to buy your candle. Do they like it? Do they not? Is that scent pleasing to them? It's how does the candle smell when it's cold? You may see that referred to as CT, cold throw. Cold throw is literally what your candle smells like when it's cold. Because let's face it, once I've got everything else figured out, this is why I'm talking about the scent last, because once I've figured out my wax and my vessel and my wick and my this and my that and my other, it really all comes down to, it doesn't matter how beautiful this looks or how well it burns. If my customer walks in the room and doesn't have a scent after a while, they're kind of bummed out. Or if I've overdone it. I have a candle in my room that is a citrus lime or a mint lime. I don't know, but I can tell you that when I got the candle, I absolutely loved the scent. Absolutely loved it. And as I burned it, it became this horrendous perfume. And I've never burned it again, and I have the lid on it. And every now and again, I take the lid off and I think, all right, let's give it a try again. No, it did fill up the room, but it was so overpowering, it became a not good smell. And so hot throw can work for or against you. And as candle makers, that's what we're looking for. I want them to have the fantastic buy me scent, but I really want them to have the best experience in the heart, those middle notes and those bottom notes and the lingering. And I want them to love my candle. Oh, how do I get that? Everything we've talked about is how you get that. It is the candle system because everything's going to work together. And when you come up with the best product, it's all those things together that work in harmony. And so you have to test and test and test and test and test and figure out the best combinations for what it is you're going for. I know, it's hard. It's hard. I know. I've been there. I am there. We're all still there. And even experienced candle makers, they go through this. If they want to change scents or change vessels, or you want to create something new or put something new in your line, you have to go through all this all the time, over and over and over. So now, a couple other tidbits. I know you've stuck with me this long. Don't give up yet. Just a couple things. Now, when we're talking about burning our candles, there's two things to remember. One, burn your candles 3.5 to 4 hours. Whether you're the consumer or you're testing your candles, that's how you're going to get the optimal burns out of your candle and the best candle life, is burning it 3.5 to 4 hours. And I know we all do it. We underburn it, we overburn it, we let them go for 8 hours. We have a party, light a candle in the bathroom, and by the end of the party, the candle's gone. Okay, not bad. You're just doing a power burn. But you're not getting the full life of the candle. In order for you to get the maximum hours out of this jar, I want to burn it 3.5 to 4 hours. So how are you going to calculate that burn time and why does it matter? Well, you're going to want to advertise that this candle can burn for 40 plus hours or 50 plus hours. How are you going to figure that out? Are you just going to guess? Yeah, there's some ways you can math around it, and there are videos out there about that. The proper and the best way to do it, you got to burn this candle out. So you're going to light it for 3.5 to 4 hours. You're going to blow it out and you're going to record everything you saw. You're going to record, what was that cold throw? Was there a hot throw? Did you get mushrooming? Did you get sooting? Did it tunnel? What was your melt pool? Is it a deep melt pool? Did it reach the sides? Then, important, I have to let my candle re-cure or re-solidify or reset up. And I'm going to do that by letting it sit a minimum of 5 hours in between burn sessions. Because if I don't do that and the melt pool was deep, it may not have cooled completely and I'm not going to get true results out of that. So I want to be able to tell my clients that this candle they should get with proper burning 40 plus hours or 50 plus hours, whatever it works out for yours. So you're going to burn it, blow it out, record. Cool. Burn it, blow it out, record. Cool. I have one candle, I literally did that 15 times and it came up with 57 hours. Because now I'm going to add up all the hours. And you're basically burning that candle till it puts itself out, till it's gone, till it's gone. That's your burn time. And like for the one that's my 57 hours, I'm going to round that down and I'm going to say 50 plus hours. Now we know our customers are probably not going to burn these the way that we're going to tell them to. I know I don't. Even as a consumer, even though I know this, I don't burn them properly. But I'm still going to educate so that hopefully if they burn it properly, they will get a full burn time and optimal results for my candle. So, any questions? I'm sure you do. I know I still have questions every single day. I come up with a question or my husband asks me something and I say, I don't know. And we go look up a video. So that's why I'm doing this, is to kind of help pass along knowledge I have, kind of to break things down as I learn them. I'm also doing it kind of as a journey for myself to see where I started and where I take this. And I encourage you to do the same. And if you do create your own channel, invite me. I want to hear what you have to say because all of our experiences are different. Even though the basics for making these candles are the same, people are coming up with new and creative things all the time. And you know what? Somebody might have an idea that I just think is amazing and I want to incorporate it into my candles or my world or my line. So that's what we got today. Lots of vocabulary, lots of little tips and tricks and things that I've just run across because I told you I talk about everything in between. Today was a lot of in between, but that vocabulary is important for you because if you don't have a real understanding on it, you can't make optimal candles and you can't get better. Now, all of these different terminologies that we hit on today, almost every single one, there are videos about just that piece of terminology. Wicks, wax, fragrances, burn times, fragrances, candle math, choosing vessels, all of it and more. And way more. So set aside some time every day, learn something new, and I've really enjoyed our time together today. Thank you so much for hanging in there with me. If you've enjoyed our chat or my rambling, however you want to look at it, don't forget to click on that subscribe button. Love to have you as part of my channel and part of the family. Follow me on Instagram, drop me a comment, and that's it. That's what I have for today. So thanks for staying. And like I always say, live your life out loud. Have a fabulous day. And until next time, bye.